everyone. Welcome to Empowering Exceptional Minds, the podcast diving into neurodiversity through real conversations with parents, individuals, and professionals on challenges, strengths, and unique experiences. I'm your host, Sara Cuen, an educational therapist, ADHD educator, and ASD specialist. At Educational Therapy LLC, my private practice, we support kids and adults with executive function and learning differences toward confidence and independence. This podcast is a collaboration with Wiz Therapy, connecting individuals to providers and streamlining services for neurodiverse communities. Our goal is to share strategies, stories, and insights to empower families, educators, and professionals. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of this podcast or Wiz Therapy. The conversations here are for information and empowerment, not a substitute for professional or medical advice. And most importantly, if you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please dial 911 immediately, or you can text 741-741 to reach the crisis text line in the US for support. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Empowering Exceptional Minds. I am here with a colleague, and I'm so excited to have her join. I feel we need more episodes about the topic we're going to talk about today, which is dyslexia. And we're also going to talk about emotional regulation when it comes to the remediation piece. So for the parents out there, this is a really important topic, and so when you are looking for somebody to work with your child, please take that into consideration. There are great people out there. So I'm gonna have Sara to introduce herself. So thank you, Sara, so much for joining to this episode today. And please tell our listeners about yourself and your journey. How do you become a dyslexia specialist?
Hello, thank you for having me on today. Let's see, so my journey actually started before dyslexia. I used to work with children with autism, one-on-one in the home-based setting, in the school setting, and I did that for a number of years. Once I had my own children, I decided that working with kids and having kids, my own kids, was not going to work out. So I wanted to just focus on raising my children. And at that point, I ran a company for kids with autism. And I did that for a long time until my youngest son was diagnosed with dyslexia. And it was a long journey up until he got the diagnosis. He went to a private Catholic school, and they kind of waved the flag, notifying us that something was going on, but never said the word dyslexia, said that he's kind of a funny learner. And we didn't really know what that meant. So we didn't take action. It was kind of like, okay, well, we'll just work with him more at home, or we'll wait and see. And it was when he was in about later first, second grade, and when the teachers came back up to us and they said, we think something else is going on. He's really struggling with reading. Again, dyslexia was not mentioned. But it was at that time I actually sent him to a reading clinic, which I'm trying not to shame myself today, because it was just a basic clinic that said, we can help him, we can support him. But it wasn't the right fit for him because, as we know, for dyslexia, which is a difference in the way kids process language, it wasn't specific or tailored to meet his needs. And so it was torture for the child. And it took us a number of years to finally figure out, yes, he has dyslexia, to get him the diagnosis, and then to get him services. And we did work with a couple of wonderful specialists. Unfortunately, the last one moved out of the area, and this was before Zoom was really a thing, and before COVID. So, we weren't really putting kids on Zoom at that time. But at that point, I didn't understand dyslexia. I'd heard about it. I think I believed in all the misconceptions of reading backwards. But I was interested. So I'm like, I need to know my child. I need to understand what's happening here. So at that point, I decided to get certified in both Barton and Wilson. And I did that. So I got certified. I started working with him. And then at that point, I said, you know what, I think I'm going to open up my own practice and begin doing this for more and more kids. But just to go back to my son and to any other parent who works with their child, it's not easy. When you're when you're working with your child, I'm not going to say especially with dyslexia, but when they have dyslexia and you're trying to provide the intervention and you're learning and you're not quite sure what you're doing, but you're following along, it's challenging. And there's behaviors and there's the mother-son relationship. So at that point, I said, never mind. We're not going to do this. We'll go back and hire somebody and you go do your thing over there and I'll do mine with the other students there. So that's how I actually got into working with kids with dyslexia, owning my own practice, and where I'm at today.
Thank you for sharing. You're preaching to the choir because I was like telling my husband, we need to outsource. I'm not gonna work
Yes,
with him.
outsource.
They know
Exactly.
they know which button to push.
Yes. Well, yeah, and I was noticing like I'd come to our working time every time and I'd already be stressed out and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is awful." And he was stressed and we'd both end up in tears and it just wasn't worth it. He wasn't learning. I wasn't growing. And so I was like, "Okay, abort ship here. We're moving on, doing something different." Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's a tough call, especially when you have all the material and you're like, "I could do this. I definitely can," but it's not. At the end of the day, the connection between the child and you is more important than that. So,
Yeah, for me it was like I just want to be the mom. I don't want to be more. I don't want to
yeah,
do EF coaching. I don't want to do that for him. I mean, I will help with what he needs
right.
when he lets me.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so I
yeah.
get it. So I'm really curious because I hear it's like you said, you already mentioned the myth about dyslexia and what are like how you saw it as a backward reading. So what is the biggest myth that you want to bust for parents listening today?
So it's somewhat easy because it's top of mind since it's been in the news a lot lately. That administration has mentioned or stated that people with dyslexia are dumb, are not smart, are not intelligent. So it's still very common to think that dyslexia is a lack of intelligence. And we, probably mother bearers and parents and those who are in the field, we stand up tall and strong with our shoulders back and say that's absolutely not true. And we have our scroll that we can put out there and say, look at all of these people who are out in the world, from presidents to astronauts to artists to all these famous people, politicians. Their intelligence is not impacted by dyslexia. It's strengthened by dyslexia. They're innovative. They think outside of the box, critical thinkers. Their brains are truly amazing. And when we continue to put out there into the world that dyslexia is an issue with intelligence and IQ, we're just continuing to spread that myth and to undermine our kids. And it's so important because we know that kids with dyslexia or any sort of a learning difference, they already feel less than. Their
Yeah.
worth is already down here. Even if nobody told them that, they are self-creating this, they're noticing, they're looking around, and they're feeling not as good as their peers. And so for me, that is one of the biggest myths that are top of mind that I want to shout from the rooftops as much as possible for parents to continue to hone in on their children's strengths as much as possible. Like strength, 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 strength. Here's all the amazing things that you can do. Here it is. Reading might be hard, but the world is out there for you. The system is broken. You are not broken.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, the amount of kids that I'm sure, I don't want to speak to you, but I'm sure both of and I, came across, and these kids are extremely intelligent. Many of them are like little engineers walking around. So for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're gonna change this freaking world for the best. So especially in today's world that is very kind of crazy out there, and we're not gonna get into politics, but it's not easy to live in this world today. And
Mhm.
we need these kids because they are the shakers and the movers of the world. And the amount of the creativity and outside of the box thinking, it's what makes them so, um, I would say, important to what we
Yeah.
need. Um, and it just blows my mind when I work with dyslexic students or ADHD or dyslexia ADHD and dysgraphia. And I have seen so many ways these kids can solve problems. It's not very linear for them. They're like, I'm like, hey, what did you just do? It's like, it
Right.
blew my mind.
Exactly. And I think what happens is that we have such a system set up that's like, well, but show me it, or show me in the way that I taught you.
Right.
And if the child's not able to do that, it's like that again, that what they did or what they're capable of is not recognized. And it's just like, poo poo, it's okay. No, that's not, you can't demonstrate how I showed you. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't mean as much. When it's obviously not the case because we do need their brains the way that they are wired in order to continue with innovation and changing our world. They have such capabilities, but it's like parents like us and providers like us that are the people who are going to keep doing that, are the ones that are back here going, keep going, keep going, keep going. We're going to shed the light here on this reading stuff, but everything else that you're capable of doing, keep going with that. You got this.
Yeah, I always tell like families, let them do what they are strong at, what their strength
Hmm.
is. If your
Yeah.
kid is an amazing athlete, keep doing that. If your kid is a musician, an artist, let them keep doing that because that's also an outlet for and who they are, and it's regulate the nervous system. And this is exactly what you and I kind of had this like back and forth communication recently. It's about how regulation is so important when we talk about also remediation. And I don't think so. Here's the thing. Um, Many programs out there, and maybe I don't want to talk to anybody, so please don't come after me. But there are people out there, of course, not from a place of doing harm, but from a place, okay, this is the program, this is the sequence, these are the drills, this is what we're going to do today.
Hmm.
And can be very strict.
Right.
And kids come to us after school. Maybe they fought with a friend, maybe they fought with mom and dad in the car, maybe brother took something or sister took something that belongs to them. And maybe they are just tired, maybe they're not feeling well, maybe they didn't eat much, maybe they didn't sleep much. All of these affecting our regulation and the nervous system. So having the understanding that regulation has to be part of the conversation is really important, especially when it comes to remediation. And I would like to hear more from you. So how does daily struggles of not being able to read at the same level as peers, and you mentioned that they already feel that, they know, even if we don't talk about it, they know.
Hmm.
And I'm a child with disability, right? I used to be that child. So with math, so it does affect our nervous system and our emotional regulation. So how is this coming to play with remediation, and what parents need to know when they're taking the next step, which it is to reach out to somebody to do the remediation piece?
So I think one thing I like to inform parents of is kind of just to take a journey through their day to day life, their own life, and to take note and become so much more aware of their regulation and what is regulation for them and when do they become dysregulated and how do they respond and react once they're dysregulated. Because nobody talks, okay, I'm not saying nobody, but not everybody talks about regulation. Are you feeling regulated today? I mean, we don't typically walk around. We in our field are talking more about it, and it's amazing. We talk about polyvagal, we talk about somatic therapy. So we're starting more and more to talk about it, but it's not a daily conversation that is happening in schools, let's
Yeah.
say. So I first, whenever I have a new client or even a client that calls that maybe I can't take on, I always start by talking about regulation, talking about how the brain works. Our brains are so important, but yet we are very rarely taught about our brains, right? In school. It's not like a class, and it should be,
Right.
because
I agree.
understanding your brain and why what's happening is happening is so important, but we're not doing that. So that's my first step, is having a conversation with just become aware of this. And mostly when you are feeling dysregulated, which could mean feeling uncomfortable, scared, afraid, or nervous, how do you respond in your day-to-day life? And we are adults. We have so much more authority over what we can do in response, right? So if we're at work, maybe we can go outside and take a break. We can take a 2-minute, we could call in sick for the day. We can do a whole bunch of different things because we're adults. But our kids, on the other hand, one, because we're not having these conversations with them all the time, they don't really understand what's happening inside their little bodies, right? And so I love that you said they come to us and we don't really know what happened before they got out of that car and into working with us. That's the same thing that happens in school. So I feel like we have an expectation of them to be somewhat little robots where, okay, wake up, get to school, and be ready to learn. Well, again, if you think about your day to day and it's 8 o'clock, I mean, some people are early birds, but some people are not. And so we're expecting these kids to be like, okay, here we go. You must be regulated and ready to learn. But that's not always the case. So then they go through their day. And we'll just talk about a child with dyslexia, and I'll just say it's Jacob. So let's say he doesn't know he has dyslexia, and he's in the classroom setting and he's looking around and he's like, everyone's looking at the board and they're reading what we're supposed to be doing, and I'm trying and I'm thinking and I'm looking at it and I'm looking at my paper and I'm looking around. Everyone else is doing it and I'm not. I don't know what to do. I'll raise my hand and ask a question. The teacher will come over, they'll support him, but they don't really know what's happening either. So maybe they're talking quickly. Maybe Jacob's already shut down, right? Because when you are stressed, when you are overwhelmed, your prefrontal cortex is no longer online. It's like, I'm out of here. I am just trying to survive right now. So this little boy is living this way, hour after hour after hour after hour. And then the school day is done. And he's like, thank God I survived another day. So his whole body has gone through some trauma each and every day. And then to top it off, it's Tuesday, and that's when he goes and sees Sarah for some, one-on-one intervention. And it's like, oh my gosh, I have to go and spend another hour doing something that I am not good at. So what I do, especially when they're new to me, is it is all about connection. It is about building a sense of safety, 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 because before you can really learn, you have to feel safe in your body. And a lot of that can happen with co-regulation. So between me and between them. So my responsibility before a student comes to my house or I go work with them is to ensure that I am regulated. That might be taking a walk around the block, walking in grass, maybe doing a little breathing exercise if that's where I am at in my body. Just various things in order to get me prepared so that I can reflect back onto them that you're safe. So when I start working with a child, it's really learning who they are. And I had a student that came, and he's 7 years old, and I didn't know very much about him. The parents didn't disclose much, and we started off with me actually expecting him to sit down, and he was like, he refused. And I'm like, okay, so this is so interesting. But almost immediately, I put one demand on him, which may have been to sit down, and he had behaviors. Physical behaviors. And if I would have continued to be like, nope, I am standing here on my ground, you need to sit down before we do anything, our relationship would have already been severed. It would have taken a long time to get that back. Now, you could establish that type of relationship with a child. You can, it's possible, but I didn't want that. So we had to take many, many sessions where it was just a little bit of work and a lot of getting to know each other, a lot of connection. It was a lot of, you know what, we're on your agenda now. And then over time, we were able to do the agenda shifting. Over time, he was building trust. He was feeling more safe and he was more available to learn. So today he can do, intermittently, he can do like, 3 working activities, then he gets his little teeny tiny hymn break. And then you do a couple more activities, but it's expanding. Now, if I sat there with him and I said, nope, we're sitting here and we're doing this and we're not moving until we do this, we wouldn't have made progress. And I think that happens a lot because we, as the adults, as the provider, feel pressure. We're getting paid for this. Parents are expecting results. I'm expected to be a miracle worker. I mean, I go through it too. But what happens, especially with this child that's top of mind for me right now, is that his mom stays here. She watches every single session. And sometimes when somebody's watching you, you're like, you don't know what they're thinking and they don't say much. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea. But after about 5 or 6 sessions, she cried. And she said, I didn't think that he could even sit and do any of that. I've never seen that. So apparently what happened was that his service provider before, she was the type of more drill sergeant oriented and telling him, he's 7, your parents are paying for this. You need to sit down and you need to learn your letters. You're not learning your letters. He was broken. And so then they're like, oh, now you're going to go and see another person who's going to teach you to read. And he's already like, no, 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 that felt awful to me. And now you're putting me back in that same situation, that same position. So connection to me is the number one thing. And asking these kids, how do you feel today? How do you feel? How does this feel in your body? Where are you feeling it in your body? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your neck? Is it in your throat? Are you getting a headache? And really observing and paying attention. And when they're disconnect, it's a sign. So we're talking about ADHD too, but it's also once you get to know them, okay, this is just stressful. Back it up. Let's just back it up 5 steps. Maybe go do something they already knew to build back that confidence, and then come back to it later when they're more available.
Everything you said is like, I wouldn't say it differently. I am a big believer in autonomy and of regulation and many things that we do. And you're right, it feels awful for them. And 100% it's how they feel. And when there is another demand, it's like you're pushing me again to do something that I'm not comfortable with. So I will push back because I need to protect myself.
Right.
So this is where anxiety comes in. This is where we might see some, what we call, yes, there is also a part, if we have dyslexia and autism, we might have pathological demand avoidance. So we have to be really careful. And we know that dyslexia is almost never by itself. So there is always come with something. Most of the time we will see more of anxiety. We might see some dyslexia, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD. There is so many co-occurrence. So we really have to take that into consideration when we work with the kids. And I love what you said, how does it feel in your body? Because some kids will not tell you how they feel. They don't have the words for that. And maybe they're too young, maybe feelings is not something that is discussed a lot with them. So creating that awareness to shift to the body, because we always feel it in the body before we say the words, is really important.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you're very kind of observant, you will see, oh, the body is, they might slouch. They might had their head on the desk. They might do moving a lot. They might be nervous. So you see the leg moving a lot. You see maybe the pen or the pencil go maybe fidgeting a lot. So there's so many things that we can see dysregulation when it comes to the body. And sometimes the kids are not even aware that this is happening.
No, exactly. They're not aware of that. And that's the biggest thing that about having these conversations and having them often and asking, where do you feel this? And usually at first they're like, what do you mean? Where do I feel this? I have no idea what you're talking about. But the more conversations you can have with them, the more open they are later on, as they get used to it. And then you can start giving them some resources and strategies of, do you need something to hold on to while we sit in here? Do you want to move the chair out of the way and not sit? You don't have to sit. I always tell my students, you do not have to sit here. You can stand, you can walk around, just stay in this little area right here as we work, but you don't have to sit down. If you need to go run up and down the driveway, go do that 5 times and then come back. And then come back and then you'll be ready. Do you need a glass of water? Even something to suck on or gum to chew on? All the things that I think are a little bit taboo, they're not. They're so helpful. And when kids find what works for them, it's golden. And it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to feel that way. Because oftentimes they don't know. And it's just like with dyslexia that you don't know to ask them, what do you see or how do you feel, until you do. And they're like, wait, I had no idea I wasn't supposed to feel this way, right? So I think having these questions more and more with them gets them used to it and helps them understand and identify more so in their body so that they can have agency over themselves now and later on. So I'm almost 47 and I have, for the last 7 years, have been learning about this, right? So for me, I have a lot of unraveling to do for all, my childhood and whatnot. For them, I want them to know it now. So there's less unraveling and more awareness. And it might not all click, but so it seeps through over time. And so then they'll start having the foundational blocks, and hopefully our world will catch up with having more conversations about how your brain works and about your nervous system, so that they are aware and they're already like, oh, I already know this stuff. I get it.
This is such an important topic. I did have a few podcasts about regulation in the nervous system, and I feel this is such an ongoing conversations that are tapping into the conversations that I have with guests. And these are also conversations that I have with parents. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I had an intake today with a parent and we were talking, and then, this kid is what we call twice exceptional, right? So she's gifted, and she might be dysgraphic, mm-hmm. And some challenges with the orthographic processing. So that's a red flag for me for maybe, probably, maybe, I didn't see the report, but probably what we call surface dyslexia, mm-hmm. Which is something that we do see sometimes being missed, especially with assessments that were done 10 years ago. Because sometimes they're only looking on the phonetic piece, right. But we also have the orthographic piece. I don't want to use too much jargon. So for parents who are really interested, we can, maybe meet again and do another conversation about that. But if you Google it, you can see what I'm talking about. So many kids, if they have orthographic challenges, they will spell the way that they hear. So they will spell phonetically. They're not making the connection. It's not because they don't see very well. It's because they're not making, their brain is wired differently, right? So we have to teach them, like with Orton Gillingham or any type of programs that go on Orton Gillingham methodology or structural word inquiry that is keep repeated in those podcasts. What I wanted to say is that these kids that may be very gifted and have those challenges are the kings and queens of masking. Mm-hmm. They compensate so much. And then when they reach middle school, that's what we're going to see more of like additional layer and of anxiety, and they're not good enough.
Yeah.
So we have to take that into consideration when we talk with families also about what is happening, because they also have to understand And I'm saying this because I think one of the aha moments that the parent had in this conversation that I had with them is that um, his kid is already feel different,
Yeah.
and
And it
she's in
doesn't
fourth
feel
grade,
good. Yeah.
and
And
he's
it
in fourth
doesn't
grade.
feel good. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It happens so young. So young.
They know. They know. I mean, they see other kids in the classroom, and it's exactly the Jacob scenario.
They see other kids in the classroom, and then there's also that spotlight effect, right? Where they're
Yeah.
like, it's just me. I am the only one. When we know that, the data is showing us that 1 in 5 kids have literacy challenges, right? So it's not
Yeah.
true, but to them it is true. And you can't really talk them out of it and tell them, oh, well, 1 in 5, because the fourth graders doesn't care or understand that. It's more emotional. And they're like, no, it is just me. Which is why, so some of my students do, I'm going to call it a luxury, a little bit of a luxury. I'm able to pull them out during the school day, so the school will allow me to go onto campus and to work with them, which I think is a luxury for them because it's during the school day window,
Right.
right? But as they get older, and I'm going to say fourth grade is usually when this happens, it's embarrassing. So here comes Sarah, she's pulling me out, and what happens is, like, it'll be out of music or PE or art. I try not to pull them out of something that they really love, because then I find it punishing. But everybody knows, oh, I'm going to get, George right now. And so everyone will be like, Sarah's here, George, Sarah's here. And then we sit out in the hallway and they have to work with me. And then all the kids are going back and forth. And you just see their little bodies are like, oh, they're trying to hide, right? They're trying to be as small as they can. And it's so unfortunate because it's like, it's the right time because it's in school, it's not after school, you're still kind of fresh. But at the same time, it's punishing to them, and it's embarrassing because they're singled out, they look different, and then other kids are asking them, well, why are you going out there? And I don't think or know all the time if our students really know or understand what is happening. Some parents either don't want them to know because they're afraid of the label of dyslexia, or just are saying, oh, you're just going to get more reading support. And it really does impact our students, my students. It does hurt them. So I always encourage my families also to have the conversation that they learn differently, that their brain is wired differently. Now for Jacob, he is very honest with people, and I don't know if it's a little bit of a shell for him that he will tell people right away, I'm dyslexic, can you read this for me? I'm dyslexic, can you do this for me? Stuff like that. Like, he is very honest and he's out the gate. And I think he does it, one, because maybe he is just more like, I'm owning this, but also I think he does it before someone else can say anything negative to him. Like, yep, I already know, I already put it out there. But not all kids are like that, and they hide it. And they would rather be, the classroom clown or the kid that has behaviors. They'd rather be known as that than the kid that can't read.
Yeah. And many times, we just wanted to apologize because a garden work was
Yes.
happening.
Sorry.
So to our listeners, well, the grass needs to be
Yeah,
mowed
next door.
next door. But what I wanted to say about that, and that's, you see where my brain went, like, oh, it went to the
Yeah.
machine. I was distracted, but I did listen to what you said. But what I wanted to say with that too is that if it's a not child like Jacob who owns it, or maybe using it as a mechanism to protect himself, for somebody from the outside, like a teacher who sees the kid just, maybe sitting there staring into the void, they might think, oh, he's not trying. Oh, he's not trying hard enough. Mm-hmm. Again, I had another intake today, and the parent told me that the school said the kid is not trying hard enough. And that was just like, it was like a kick in my gut. Yeah. Because they believe me, to all the parents there, kids do well if they can. That's Ross Green's. And it's mostly because of something that is happening that they're not doing. And the kid is not lazy. And for teachers, looking from the side, if they do have the trainings, then they know that something going on with regulation, if this kid is like misbehaving. And I also understand that you have 20 something kids in the classroom.
Absolutely. Yep.
And um, and then if they are get out to like push in or pull out with a special education teacher or with a reading specialist, it's like you said, this kid might look smaller and smaller because other kids are looking at them, even though maybe it's two in that group, right? Or three kids.
Yeah.
Because it's almost never one-on-one in
Right. Right.
in the public schools. So this is something to consider, that this is happening for the child during the day.
So
And
it
as
is no,
parents,
yeah, it's no surprise when a child gets home from school and it's time to do homework that they might throw a fit or a tantrum or be reluctant or avoidant. And again, that's where I come into the parents and I just say, that doesn't matter right now.
nope.
That doesn't. Your job right now as the parent is just purely to connect, especially if it comes to reading. And I hope that our kids can just find some love or some joy of reading, whether that be, you know, a parent reading to them or a parent and the child listening to Audible. Like Jacob and I, we loved listening to Harry Potter. That was our thing. So we would listen to it, then we would watch the movie, and then we would listen to the next one and watch the movie. And actually on Tuesday, we're going to Universal Studios to go to see Harry Potter World there. Yeah, but it's building that connection, and reading is a connection when you're doing it with somebody else and having conversations, and even if you're just listening to it, but you take the demands off of your child. And again, it's like building that relationship and safety. We always have to go back to safety. And then maybe after a while, you're like, hey, what's this word? Or, you know, we can throw in something like this or do comprehension stuff, but always like increasing their understanding of their self, of their self-confidence of, oh, wow, great job. But also on the flip side of this, another thing I tell I call my parents, my students' parents, is that they also need to be honest with their child when they're feeling dysregulated.
Yes.
So when they flip their lid, you know, because parents aren't expected to have good days. Well, we definitely don't all the time and being pleasant. But it's important for us to come back to them and say, whoops, flip my lid. I am so sorry. Or this is what happened and this is how I responded. And that just shows the child, okay, one, it's okay. Two, again, it's awareness. And three, how am I going to do it differently? But when your parent is showing and demonstrating this to you, it changes everything, right? They start to have more of those conversations in that language that they can use and have that be, and that's available to them to use in the classroom setting, or even just know, oh my gosh, my heart is beating like crazy. I need to do something about this. I need to go get some water and then I'll come back. Stuff like that, so that they start understanding and they're not sitting with that stuck and trapped inside their body. They need to get rid of it. Even if it's like, just shake real quick, flap out your hands. All right, now try it again. Let's go back to it.
Yeah. This is a very important topic. We do need to finish up the podcast.
Yeah.
What is something that you feel like, okay, these are the takeaways, like tips for families, tips for teachers, and especially to those parents that they have, having a dyslexic kid is a new diagnosis for them. And what do you want to spread to the world out there?
So having a new diagnosis of dyslexia can be scary. You may or may not know. You may just know the myths, and that's what you're going off of. So if you're listening to this, one of the most important things to do is to understand your child. It's to reach out for support. So there's so many different groups out there that can support you so that you know that you are not alone. And to also really find out what services and interventions are appropriate for your child. And having these conversations with experts is going to get you there. And that's why I say, like, find your community, find your people, reach out to me. I'm happy to have these conversations all the time with people because I want to ensure that your child is not 16-year-old like my son Jacob, we didn't even get into this, but that's still reading at a first grade level. I want to be sure that when you're looking for intervention, that you're not going to just a basic reading clinic. That when you do have intervention, that you are actually seeing your child make progress. So you're not alone, you're not on an island. Your child will and can learn to read. We just need to find the right effective intervention.
Absolutely. And I will add to that is that find somebody who has the experience, who has the training, that know how dyslexia happens in the brain.
Yeah.
And if schools tell you, oh, it's because your child is bilingual, it's in the brain, which means it's going to be in both languages. And you know your child best, so go with your guts. Sara, thank you so much. We will add Sara's information to the description of the podcast so you can find her. As always, I'm connected with Sara. If you're coming through me, happy to connect you with Sara. Thank you so much for your time. If you're listening to this podcast, please subscribe and follow us on Apple, on Spotify, and YouTube. Sara, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.